So last night I had some friends over. We had barbecue going on, and we were talking, and my friend got a phone call, and we overheard that Chadwick Boseman had passed away from colon cancer, 43 years old, which is crazy. I guess he hit it pretty well, but it hit me a lot harder than I thought it would. I did a review of Black Panther. I recorded one when I got home from the movie theater. I was so excited. I never posted it. Maybe I should. But I don't think people realize how significant that role was. More important than that, like, it was such a hard hit for a number of reasons. 2020 has just been brutal, to say the least. And I can recall going to the movie theater and seeing Black Panther and being so excited for that movie. Like, just everything about it was great. And I don't think people realize how significant that movie really is. People say, oh, we've had black superheroes. It's not quite the same thing. We had a black superhero that was not just a black superhero, he was an African. He was not an African American. He was African. And not just that, the film presented so much more than just that. I mean, obviously the perspective of what, the quote unquote villain, I wouldn't even say Killmonger's a villain, it's just a different perspective. The reality is there's a lot that many people can agree with. I would say that his character in the film, what was going on, spoke to a lot of people in terms of injustice. You could argue that the methods employed were a bit too far, but his thoughts, the injustices, feeling betrayed and wanting the opportunity to make a difference in the world, even though it was by force, was something many people can relate to. I had to really just, when I heard the news about him passing, I mean, Chadwick Boseman did so much more than just Black Panther. He played Jackie Robinson, and numerous other characters, representing, historical figures in such an amazing way. So if you haven't, and just on a totally unrelated, or rather different note, 21 Bridges, if you haven't seen it, it's a great performance. But it hit me pretty hard when I heard the news, not just because, obviously, Black Panther 2, and also because I can recall being, as a kid, I grew up in the Bronx, and I primarily, black and Hispanic neighborhood. And so you might not really get it, looking at the color of my skin, but some people think that, okay, I'm light skinned, so I'm white. And some people think, that it's really hard to explain, because being Hispanic is so different. You're not really accepted in certain communities, and even amongst Hispanics, there are levels. Like, I've been called, people have said, you're not real Hispanic, because I don't speak Spanish that well, or because I don't eat rice and beans. I really don't. I hate them. I hate rice and beans, but that's for a totally different thing. But the point is, you see, growing up in my neighborhood, like, I remember I'm a huge Batman fan. I've always loved superheroes, but there weren't any superheroes that were like me. There weren't Spanish superheroes. That wasn't a thing. And, there was plenty of white superheroes, and then there were black superheroes. I remember being a fan of Spawn when I was younger, and I recall a moment when I was young. I got on the bus. There was two girls on the bus who saw my dad. Normally my mom would pick me up from the bus stop, so my dad was picking me up. And so they asked me, they said, "Your dad's black?" And I was like, I hadn't really noticed that my dad is dark skinned and my mom is light skinned. So we were all just, it was just a Puerto Rican household. I never really thought about it. And at that moment, I think I was in first grade, and I was like, my dad's black. And so I remember asking my dad, I'm like, Dad, are you black? And he was like, he's like, well, that's complicated. And he said, I'm Puerto Rican, but obviously that's, there are light Puerto Ricans, there are dark Puerto Ricans, and yes, we have black blood. Like our ancestors come from, they're native here, and then there's the Spanish European ancestors, and then we have African heritage. And I mean, at first grade, I probably couldn't understand that. I was just happy. Like, I think he was maybe worried that there was going to be a negative reaction, but I was excited because I was like, oh, I'm half black. And so, for the longest time, that's what I understood to be a thing. And I was excited partially because now I could identify with this. So now it was like, oh, now there's a superhero that's like my dad. And as I got older, I understood there's, varying levels of that, but there was something really significant for a kid like me. And I think that as things have slowly started to change, I remember watching Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and seeing a Puerto Rican flag on Miles Morales' backpack. Like, my eyes got watery because now I have a Hispanic superhero, and my kids have a Hispanic superhero to look up to. And mind you, he's only half Hispanic. He's half black. And I'm like, we're at least getting there. But I mean, if you look at the Marvel universe, if you look at the DC universe, there's really, I mean, in terms of movies, in the comics, there are characters they're usually, sidekicks or recycled characters, like the third version of something. Like for example, the second Blue Beetle is Mexican. But in terms of the films, there's no Spanish representation. There's no Hispanic representation. There really isn't. I mean, you look at the entire MCU, there's not, everybody was really excited for, female films and for all these movies, but the closest thing we got is Luis in Ant-Man. And I love that part, but, he's not a superhero. And it sucks that we're not represented that way. And so, to me, seeing, black superheroes is important because that's about as close as I can get to that representation. And so I'm getting a little emotional because, like, I heard that news yesterday and I was like, damn, man. I remember how powerful that feeling was. Everything is so jacked up here right now. Everything that's going on, and I just think specifically the black community really just didn't need a hit like this right now. And I know that seems maybe in perspective, people are like, he's an actor. That's a person. That's somebody's, son, somebody's husband, somebody's friend. And the impact that person had is probably more significant than maybe many people realize. Like I said, for me, it was huge. So I really don't know how else to say it, but like, thank you to his family. Prayers with all of you during this time. Cancer, man. Fuck cancer. We got to do better, man. We got to do better. And there's so many people catering to our worst demons right now. And I just don't understand it. More and more pain, and yet people it's almost like they're celebrating the pain. But I don't want to dive into that. I just really wanted to say just those things. I guess before I start rambling and just going off, I just wanted to say rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman, and Wakanda forever.